Hello, in this recording I'm going to introduce several concepts, which seems like a lot, but they're fairly straightforward concepts, and you will cover them as well in workbook exercise 2. But if you start finding some of these ideas challenging, just grab one of the textbooks and have a look at the chapters I've recommended online in the reading list, and you will find these concepts covered. So first of all, I want to talk about what's known as marginal costs and benefits. So when we are making decisions about which needs to meet, we weigh up the costs and benefits of doing something, and particularly doing a little bit more, a little bit less of an activity. So I've got the example there. So if you imagine Halo, a nightclub in Bournemouth, you might weigh up the cost and benefit of going to Halo 4 times a month instead of 3 times a month. And basically, you're not going to do a kind of calculation, but as humans, we're kind of, we're weighing up these decisions in our mind a little bit unconsciously. But if the marginal benefit of going to Halo, that extra one more time, exceeds the marginal cost, it's a rational decision to go. So basically, you're thinking, I'm going to benefit more from this than actually I think it's going to really the cost of going. I'll be willing to pay to go. And so it's what's known as rational decision making. And so you can look at it in that example, that's looking at it from the consumer's perspective, but also you can look at it from someone who's an event management perspective, so someone's providing an event service. They also make rational decisions, and you can see there that they weigh up the costs and benefits of providing a service. So they look at the costs and, in this case, the revenue, the income coming in, of producing additional events. And again, if the revenue, i.e. the benefits, are going to exceed the costs, well, they're probably going to produce some additional events. Then I'm going to look at total utility and marginal utility. So total utility is basically, and that's a kind of very much a sort of set definition now, the level of satisfaction gained as a result of the total amount consumed, all of the things being equal at a specific time. Okay, so a bit of a mouthful there, but basically it's your total level of satisfaction gained from some kind of consumption experience. And marginal utility, this is the amount of extra satisfaction that we gained as a result of possessing a little bit more of some kind of good that we purchase or service within a specific time frame. Okay, so I've got an example in a moment which uses the idea of buying burgers or eating burgers, and that would be an example of a good, but a service might be attending an extra event. So the example of going to the Halo nightclub. A marginal utility, you can actually work this out mathematically. It's the change in total utility divided by the change in quantity, and we'll look at an example. So one of the problems we have in terms of measuring marginal utility is actually we don't really know what's going on in people's brains. So we don't really understand any individual satisfaction. So what we do is we use a willingness to pay, and we give a monetary value for each extra unit of consumption. And that's just one way we can think about this, to give us some idea about measuring it. So there is this principle of diminishing marginal utility. So basically, this is where I've got the burger example. As you consume more of something, like a burger, you become satisfied, and therefore the desire to actually eat more, consume more, declines. Okay, and that's pretty obvious to sort of see with a burger. You can only eat so many before you get full. Therefore, your satisfaction is going to decline, probably quite quickly with eating burgers, but also you could consider this in terms of, say, attending music festivals. You go to 1 or 2 in the summer, and you get a lot of satisfaction. Maybe if you start going to 6 or 7, if you could afford to, then possibly some of that satisfaction begins to decline. And you can see in that table there, if you look at that, we've got the number of burgers here, and obviously there's no utility, no total utility, no marginal utility if you don't consume any, but you consume 1 burger and there's a total utility of 7. You consume 2, that only goes up by 6, that total utility. And if you consume 3, between 2 and 3, it only goes up by 5. So you can see, although you're gaining more utility, or more total utility from consuming burgers, actually the amount it goes up by is gradually declining and eventually it becomes negative here. So we can see in terms of the marginal utility, when it goes from 0 to 7, the marginal utility of consuming one burger is 7. But when it goes up from 1 to 2 burgers, that only increases by 6. The marginal utility is only 6. So that is that change in total utility divided in the change in consumption, which is going up by 1 each time. And that's what gives us that marginal utility. As with lots of things in economics, we can look at this in graphs. So on the left-hand side there, you've got the total utility graph. So basically, as the quantity is going up, you can see that the total utility goes up, but there comes a certain point where it begins to really level out. And actually, it then begins to decline. So it reaches a peak and then declines. And actually, if we plot that marginal utility graph, what we see is that actually marginal utility is going down all the time. You've got a negative slope there. And eventually, as it says, it goes through the horizontal axis, the 0 point, which is around about the consumption of 8 burgers in the example I used, which is where the peak is reached over there. So it's a way for us to think about people's consumption decisions. There's various things that might influence utility if we're thinking about it in an events context. So you might think about some other things, but I've just got a little list here of things that might be a factor. So it could be things like the location of an event. If it was difficult to get to, that might reduce the utility of attending, so it reduces your satisfaction because it would be a challenge. Could be features of the venue. It might be a venue that you particularly like. Could be the performers there. Could be people you're attending with. So, if you're going with a really good groups of friends, there's what we call co-creation, so the way that we interact with the people around us at the event, as well as the event managers who produce the event. So, we get this co-creation with other people. So if there's a really good crowd of people at an event that we enjoy being with, that will increase our total utility. Okay, so some concepts for you to think about there. And there is one more session under consumer demand and decisions, which is the one on equimarginal returns that you need to go and watch now.